Okay. First we'll chant prayers and then we'll start. Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshurumiritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Caitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapatantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapatakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Anvitam Tam Sujevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Namam Vishnu Padai Krishna Preshtai Jai Pataka Swami Nitinamine Namacharya Padai Nitaika Pradayine Gaura Kata Dhamadai Nagarakramatarine Namam Vishnu Padai Krishna Preshtai Bhutale Srimate Gopi Paranadhanadasa Itinamine Namam Vishnu Padai Krishna Preshtai Bhutale Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Adeshtarine Vancha Kalpattarubhyasya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Ukam Karoti Vanchalam Pangum Langayate Giram Kripatamaham Bande Shri Guruntarinam Kripatamaham Bande Paramananda Madhav Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Katanchana Smriti Yasmin Dashkaram Sukaram Bhavet Smriti Vipritam Syat Shri Chaitanyam Namamitam. Today, I think it's. Can you hear it? It's echoing. We just see if it's okay. Hare Krishna. No echo. Okay. So today, I thought that I would not be able to give the class because it was a very packed schedule with my children wanting to meet. And then Dumna Maharaj was in Mayapur, and a lot of things that come up, some ceremonies and things like that. So, but then I remembered what Prabhupada had said, that impossible is a word in the fool's dictionary. So I kept on meditating on that throughout the morning. And here I am, I finally made it to the Leelamrita session. However, I managed to actually squeeze some time now. So I'll take a class for 1 hour, and then we'll have a question answer session for 15 minutes, and then I need to go. That's the maximum I could squeeze in, but still something is definitely better than nothing. Instead of 1.5 hours, I'll talk for 1 hour, and then we'll have a question answer session for 15 minutes. Okay. So last session, we studied how, let me do screen sharing. Is it shared already? Oh, no, not yet, right? Where is the Zoom link? Where is Zoom? Okay. Zoom icon is gone. Where is Zoom icon? Okay. Here. Where? Where is the Zoom icon? Maybe minimize it. Okay. Okay. Try again. Check. Okay, that's fine. So last session we dealt with Srila Prabhupada's taking sannyas, and some of you may recollect that at the sannyas ceremony, Srila Prabhupada spoke in English because that is the purpose for which he took sannyas on the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who came to him in a dream multiple times and beckoned him to take sannyas. And he had given Srila Prabhupada the instruction to preach in English to the English-speaking world. So Prabhupada took sannyas to help him accomplish that mission, that order that was given to him by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So last session ended with Srila Prabhupada taking sannyas, and this session we'll see what Srila Prabhupada did after he took sannyas. So I've given a small, it's called, the chapter is called, getting into the next chapter. Chapter is called This Momentous Hour of Need. And the first caption that I've given is Books and Delhi Office. So far we know that Srila Prabhupada only published Back to God magazines. He didn't think of printing books yet. And Delhi, he would always stay in the houses of well-wishers. He didn't have a place of his own. So we'll see now how Srila Prabhupada got a place of his own in Delhi. Okay. So after his sannyas, Bhaktivedanta Swami, accompanied by some of the Keshwaji Math's devotees, made a short preaching tour of Agra, Kanpur, Jhansi, and Delhi. But he was soon back in his own place at the Vamshi Gopalaji temple. No one called him Abhay Babu any longer. Even amongst friends, it was Swamiji or Maharaja. And people often addressed him as Swami Bhaktivedanta Ji, Swami Maharaj, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. People readily recognized him as a sadhu and offered respect. Yet his basic problems remained. He wanted to write and print, but he had no money. He wanted to broadcast the message of Godhead, but few were willing to listen. Such things hadn't been changed by his becoming a Swami. When a librarian advised Bhaktivedanta Swami to write books, they were permanent, whereas newspapers were read once and thrown away. He took it that his spiritual master was speaking through this person. Then an Indian Army officer who liked Back to God had suggested the same thing. Bhaktivedanta Swami took it as a revelation from his spiritual master. As a dependent servant, constantly meditating on the desires of his transcendental master and seeking his guidance, Bhaktivedanta Swami felt his spiritual master's reciprocal blessings and personal presence. More and more, he was feeling confidential contact with Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. And now he was feeling an inspiration to write books. So we see here, there's a librarian and an Indian Army officer. One of them, I don't know which one of them, but one of them, Srila Prabhupada met in a tea stall when Prabhupada would go to distribute Back to God. To my recollection, it was the Indian Army officer who suggested, along with the librarian, which also is mentioned separately, that why don't you publish books, because magazines people throw away, books people don't throw away. So and Prabhupada, so when Prabhupada heard that, as it's mentioned here, he took it that his spiritual master was speaking through this person. Now, this is not an ordinary thing. I think we have dealt with this a little earlier in the sessions, that for a sincere disciple, he sees everything as a manifestation of his spiritual master. So the instruction of the spiritual master can come even through a non-devotee. But however, we should be careful that pure devotees can understand it like that properly. They are in tune with the desires of their of the parampara, of their immediate spiritual master and the entire parampara. They're fully in tune with it, the perfected pure devotees. But those of us who are practicing Krishna consciousness, those of us who are in the path of pure devotional service, we should be very careful that to judge what we are getting from anyone as if it is in line with what we've studied in Prabhupada's books. Of course, even Prabhupada never took anything which was not in line with the teachings of his spiritual master, but he knew immediately. It was not an intellectual thing for him. Like for us, it could be an intellectual thing. Whether we should intellectual means we should use our intelligence. Is this something we need to accept or not? So whereas for Prabhupada, it was spontaneous, because he had such a strong connection with his spiritual master. Like there is this interview where Srila Prabhupada is asked, how do you conduct the Krishna consciousness movement? So Prabhupada replies that Krishna tells me what to do. So when this conversation is going on with the reporter, I think it was Rameshwar Prabhu who says that what Prabhupada means is that Krishna says that the intelligence has to come from scripture, and when that intelligence is non-different from hearing from Krishna, something like that he was talking, And Prabhupada said, no, Krishna directly tells me. So this is what happens when one is in a very advanced stage of Krishna consciousness. Krishna directly speaks. And so Prabhupada, by virtue of his connection with the spiritual master, could feel his spiritual master's personal presence in some of those things that he heard. Whereas we generally have to understand whatever we hear from anyone with our intelligence. But for Prabhupada, because of his connection with the spiritual master, he could immediately know that this is my Guru Maharaj speaking. He considered Srimad Bhagavatam because it was the most important and authoritative Vaishnava scripture. Although Bhagavad Gita was the essence of all Vedic knowledge present in fashion, Srimad Bhagavatam is elaborate. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati and Bhakti Vinod Thakur had both written Bengali commentaries on the Bhagavatam. In fact, most of the great Vaishnavacharyas of the past had commented on Lord Chaitanya himself had recommended Srimad Bhagavatam as the spotless Vedic literature. Now, this is a very important thing, that if someone asks us to encapsulate our entire philosophy in one sentence or one phrase or one verse, then we have that, which is Aradhya Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayas Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachit Ashesha Vrajavadu Vargena Kalpita Srimad Bhagavatam Praman. So this is our philosophy, that Aradhya Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayas, that we worship Krishna, Aradhya Bhagavan, who is Vrajesha Tanayas, who is the son of Lord Nanda, Nanda Maharaj. So the son of Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda. Tadhama Vrindavanam. Where does he reside? He resides in Vrindavan. And Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachit Ashesha Vrajavadu Vargena Kalpita. So what is the best mode of worshipping Krishna? It is as taught by as exhibited by the gopis of Vrindavan. As taught by the gopis of Vrindavan. That's the highest mode of worship of Krishna. Then what is the proof of this? Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanamamalam. It is the highest pramana for us about the absolute truth, and it is spotless. Prema Pumarto Mahan. That's the next line. Prema Pumarto Mahan. What is achieved by worshipping Krishna in the mood of the gopis? Prema Pumarto, using the evidence of what is the result of worshipping Krishna in the mood of the gopis as explained by Srimad Bhagavatam? Prema Pumarto Mahan. So then we attain Prema, which is the highest treasure. So this is Lord Chaitanya. So Srimad Bhagavatam plays a very cardinal role in Krishna consciousness. It is our scripture. When we say, if someone asks, what is your scripture? We say Srimad Bhagavatam. Of course, Bhagavad Gita is also scripture. But our identifying scripture is Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavad Gita is also there, but it's a preliminary scripture. But Bhagavatam, when someone asks us, you are Gaudiya Vaishnavas, what is your scripture? We immediately say Srimad Bhagavatam. And an English translation and commentary for this book could one day change the hearts of the entire world. And if we could publish even a few books, his preaching would be enhanced. He could go abroad with confidence and not appear empty-handed. One day, Gaurachanda Goswami proprietor of the Radha Damodar temple, approached Bhaktivedanta Swami, inviting him to come live at the Radha Damodar temple, being the eternal home of Jiva Goswami and Rupa Goswami. It would be more suitable for his writing and translating. Bhaktivedanta Swami was interested. He had never stopped his regular visits there, and he always felt inspired in the presence of the Samadhi tombs of the great leaders of Lord Chaitanya's movement, Jiva Goswami and Rupa Goswami. But when he went to look at the two available rooms, he found them in poor repair. They had not been maintained or lived in for many years. Not wanting to miss the opportunity, however, Bhaktivedanta Swami agreed to take the rooms at 5 rupees per month. He estimated that for a little more than 500 rupees, he could have electricity installed and extensive repairs made, and when it was finished, he could move in. Bhaktivedanta Swami saw the invitation as auspicious, and living there would complement his new project of presenting Srimad Bhagavatam in English. Of all Vrindavan's temples, Radha Damodar had the largest collection of original writings by the 6 Goswamis and their followers. More than 2,000 separate manuscripts. That's quite a lot. 2,000 separate manuscripts. Many of them 300, some even 400 years old. Bhaktivedanta Swami looked forward to residing there someday and serving in the company of Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Jiva Goswami. For now, he would remain at the Vamshi Gopalaji temple, and with whatever money he could collect, he would gradually repair the rooms. It was an important maxim of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's that a preacher should go to the cities and not remain in the seclusion of a holy place. So in that spirit, Bhaktivedanta Swami continued commuting to Delhi, even though it was a hell, and even though he had no fixed residence there. Often, he was taken in by businessmen who felt obliged on the basis of Indian culture. A good man, if he wanted to be favored by God, should accommodate the sadhus and give them meals and a place to stay. But the vision of such pious men was a sentimental Hinduism, and their receptions were artificial. They could not really appreciate Bhaktivedanta Swami's work, and Bhaktivedanta Swami was not of a mind to impose himself upon such hosts. Then he spoke with Mr. Hitasaran Sharma, manager of the Radha Press. In the past, Mr. Sharma had printed flyers and stationery for the League of Devotees, and Bhaktivedanta Swami had stayed in Mr. Sharma's house on occasion. Mr. Sharma introduced Bhaktivedanta Swami to Pandit Sri Krishna Sharma. This is a very interesting thing that happens, that Mr. Sharma, he introduces Prabhupada to Pandit Sri Krishna, he introduces Mr. Hitasharan Sharma. He introduced Bhaktivedanta Swami to Pandit Sri Krishna Sharma, a caste Brahmana, an active religionist, secretary to the century-old Delhi Religious Society, Sri Naval Prem Sabha. Out of sympathy for Bhaktivedanta Swami's literary labors, Krishna Pandit gave him a room in his Radha Krishna temple in the Chippivada neighborhood of Old Delhi. Now, Bhaktivedanta Swami would have a permanent office in Delhi. Now, this is interesting that this Pandit, Sri Krishna Pandit, who gives Prabhupada a room in the Radha Krishna temple in the Chippivada neighborhood of Old Delhi. I don't know how many of you have been there. I have been there many years ago. I think it was 6 or 7 years ago. But now we have a full-fledged temple. When at that time, we did have a temple that was taken by ISKCON. Now we have a much better temple, much more well done. And It is in the old Delhi, means you have, it's a very, the streets are cluttered. And of course, the metro goes very close to that. It's walkable distance to the metro. It is a predominantly Muslim neighborhood with the Jama Masjid in very close proximity. In close vicinity is the Jama Masjid, and the old area Delhi, the crowds, the uncleanliness, or whatever you may call it, of old Delhi, you can see there in that area. But you have narrow winding lanes, and finally you get the Chippiwara temple. Very beautiful place. The moment you enter that place, you get this feeling, this is Prabhupada's place. Even before as soon as ISKCON acquired, we could go. Even otherwise we could go, but then it was our own place. So now they've renovated it. Even more than when I had gone. But even when I had gone, you could immediately feel this is Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada's rooms have a certain presence. Like, for example, in Vrindavan, his rooms in Mayapur, his rooms in Bombay, like that. Whichever place he had been, Calcutta, and in different places in the West. Those of you who have been there to these different places can speak about it. That would know that there's a strong personal presence of Srila Prabhupada in his rooms. Okay, so the next section is about Krishna Pandit. How Krishna Pandit actually really tried to help Srila Prabhupada. So I've just phrased it as the very enthusiastic Krishna Pandit. Krishna Pandit, dressed in a black, lightweight cotton coat, the kind made internationally recognizable by Pandit Nehru, and he had the Nehru hat also. He spoke good English and was garrulous. He was well known and respected within the neighborhood. He saw Bhaktivedanta Swami as God sent, a sadhu for him to take care of, and thus prove once again the piety of Hindu culture. He found his new guest likable, a simple, gentle, gracious, and accomplished Vaishnava scholar. Krishna Pandit said he understood the importance of Bhaktivedanta Swami's Sanatan Dharma mission and his need for a Delhi office, and he vowed to supply his guest with whatever he required. Although Bhaktivedanta Swami was reluctant to ask for anything for himself, Krishna Pandit brought in a sitting mat and a low table, placing them before the pyramid, and he also brought a mattress. This pyramid refers to, see, what happens is when there are deities in the temple, above them there's a pyramid-shaped structure so that people don't walk on top of the deities. So this you can see if you go to Chippiwara temple, that there is this pyramid-like structure inside Prabhupada's room. Placing them before the pyramid, and he also brought a mattress. He showed Bhaktivedanta Swami how to operate the room's single light, a bulb and metal shade that hung from a cord and could be raised or lowered by hand. He brought a picture of Radha and Krishna that had been given to his guru by the Maharaja of Jaipur, and set it within a niche in the wall, relishing that Bhaktivedanta Swami could gaze upon it with the eyes of a true devotee. Bhaktivedanta Swami had wanted a secure place for writing books before going to the West, and Lord Krishna had provided it. Notice this. Bhaktivedanta Swami had wanted a secure place for writing books before going to the West, and Lord Krishna had provided it. Now he could work either in Vrindavan or in Delhi. Almost immediately, he began Bhakti Garden again, serializing book excerpts from his previous manuscripts, while at the same time beginning Srimad Bhagavatam. When Krishna Pandit learned of his guest's lone struggles to produce Bhakti Garden, he volunteered to help with some of the business aspects of the publication. Bhaktivedanta Swami was indeed gratified by Krishna Pandit's sincere help, and in appreciation he gave him an addition to his name, Hari Bhaktanudasa, devotee. After 6 months in Chippivada, Bhaktivedanta Swami wrote an appreciation in the temple's guest book. I am pleased to write herein, Prabhupada, that I have come to Delhi from my headquarters, 1 by 859 Keshi Ghat, Vrindavan, Uttar Pradesh, purely on a spiritual to propagate the cult of devotional service of the Lord. And I am more pleased to mention herewith that Shriman Sri Krishna Sharma Hari Bhaktan has provided me a suitable room for my literary activities. I am publishing an English fortnightly magazine of the name Back to Garden from this place, and the Naval Prem Sabha, of which Sri Krishnaji is the honorary secretary, is arranging for my daily lectures on Srimad Bhagavat. Late Pandit Jyoti Prasad Sharma, father of Sri Krishna Ji, was also known to me, and during his lifetime, whenever I used to come to Delhi, late Pandit Jyoti Prasad Ji would provide me with residential place. His good son is also following in the footsteps of his noble father, and as secretary of the Naval Prem Sabha, he is doing good service in propagating Ram Nam all over the city. Okay, just give me a break. I just need to drink a little water. Okay. In neat English script, Bhaktivedanta Swami went on to write that in his opinion, temples should be used solely for educating the public in spiritual values, and that was his personal mission, to organize temples for that service. Temples are not meant for ordinary householders engaged simply in the matters of animal propensities. Those who are actually engaged in the service of the Lord, deity, the predominator of the temple, can only be allowed to remain in the temple, otherwise not. Trying to compose Srimad Bhagavatam Chippivada while surrounded by sometimes noisy families with their non-devotional domestic habits had impressed upon him the importance of not using a temple as an apartment house. Now, one thing that is very important here is that in each English script, if you notice here, Bhaktivedanta Swami went on to write in his opinion, temple should be used solely for educating the public in spiritual values. This is why he established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, to educate the public in spiritual values by having people live in the temples who exemplify those values. Because the best form of educating the public is by being examples. So when Prabhupada spoke about temple resident devotees, he was referring to those devotees who are educated in science of Krishna consciousness and who are living that science. And it is not enough for us to just preach Krishna consciousness. Rather, the proper practitioner is the best preacher. So Prabhupada would often say that you're only distributing my books, but you're not reading them. These books are written for devotees or anyone interested in Krishna consciousness. Read them. And we are supposed to read them and live that life. So that's very important, that even as long back as that, when he's writing in Chippiwara temple, he's writing an appreciation. He makes it a point to say that temple is a place for educating the public in spiritual values, which means it's not a place for eating, sleeping, and like the Gaudiya Maths had deteriorated into that. The preaching spirit had been gone, and people are interested in, okay, maintaining the deity and having nice food and proper, say, going to sleep. But the purpose of any spiritual institution, any spiritual movement, like the Gaudiya Math or the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, the purpose is to preach, That's the purpose of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So this very enthusiastic Krishna Pandit, actually originally I had wanted to also put in bracket Hari Bhaktanu-Das, but I forgot. So this very enthusiastic Krishna Pandit was named as Hari Bhaktanu-Das by Srila Prabhupada. Okay, now the first attempt that he made after he heard from the librarian and the Indian Army officer about publishing books instead of magazines, the very first attempt was the book called Easy Journey to Other Planets. So this, I don't know how many of you know this, but now we can see that this book was written well before Prabhupada started writing Srimad Bhagavatam, translating Srimad Bhagavatam. This is one of our, this is the first book of the Krishna consciousness movement. I mean, as written by Srila Prabhupada for the Western world. Okay. Despite his plans to settle down and begin the monumental task of translating Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhaktivedanta Swami is ready to preach in other ways also. In October of 1959, he had encountered a news article in the Times of India. Two American scientists had received the Nobel Prize in Physics for discovering the antiproton. According to one of the fundamental assumptions of the new theory, the article read, there may exist another world or an anti-world built up of antimatter. The other world reminded Bhaktivedanta Swami of the eternal spiritual world described in the Bhagavad Gita. He was well aware that the scientists were not speaking of anti-material in the sense of eternal or spiritual, but he thought of using their scientific terms to capture the interest of scientific-minded people. Now, when scientists speak about antimatter, it's also another kind of matter, which has opposite properties to the kind of matter that we know. So for them, antimatter means it's also a kind of matter which has opposite properties to the kind of matter which we know currently. But whereas Prabhupada actually plays with words there, I mean, he takes advantage of that verse, of that word called antimatter. And if those of you who have read Easy Journey to Other Planets would know, Prabhupada, right from the beginning, he goes for it. He tries to say, just like the scientists are saying, there is something called antimatter. Yes, we have always been saying there is antimatter and things like that, Okay. He was well aware that the scientists were not speaking of anti-material in the sense of eternal or spiritual, but he thought of using their scientific terms to capture the interest of scientific-minded people. He conceived of an essay presenting the theistic science of Bhagavad Gita in terms of the anti-material particle and the anti-material world. Our Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj had coined an interesting term for the Atma. He used to call it the spiriton. It's like a proton, neutron, electron. So there are many ons in physics. So he coined a term called spiriton. And it's a catchy word which people can also relate to. Oh, you have proton, neutron, electron. You also have what do you call it? A spiriton. That makes a little bit of, it's easier for people to relate to it if you put it in those terms, the spiriton. Okay. It was a time when the whole world was talking of space travel. Indian news media had reported the Indian news media had reported the Russian Sputnik 2 years ago, and the race for space had begun. Seizing on the current interest in space travel, Bhaktivedanta Swami described how by Bhakti Yoga, the soul can travel past the furthest reaches of space to the eternal planets of the spiritual world, where life is blissful and full of knowledge. He gave his own fresh translations of Bhagavad Gita verses, couched in the language of the new physics, with his antimaterial particle and antimaterial world. The complete work, Easy Journey to Other Planets, was a 15,000 word manuscript. And he showed it to Hitasaran Sharma of Radha Press. But he didn't have enough money to get the little book printed. In February of 1960, Bhaktivedanta Swami decided to print it himself in 2 installments of Back to Godhead. The articles drew an immediate response from a physicist at the Gujarat University in Ahmedabad, Mr. Y.G. Naik, who received Back to Godhead through the mail. That's his name. Dr. Naik thought Bhaktivedanta Swami's application of the antimaterial particle was really a grand one. This is no doubt a classic essay. Dr. Naik was interested in further discussion on physics and transcendental knowledge. And Bhaktivedanta Swami replied with equal enthusiasm, finally asking the physicist to join in distributing the cultural heritage of India to the whole world. So this reminds me of a pastime of Srila Prabhupada, where Prabhupada is sitting on the roof of the Jew temple and talking to devotees. Prabhupada had a disciple in Mumbai called Manmohan Das, who was a businessman. So Prabhupada was talking to a group of educated men. I don't recollect who they were. Perhaps they were lawyers. He was talking to a group of intelligent men. And Prabhupada said, so we have everyone in our movement. We have lawyers, for example, he was referring to them. And then he saw Manmohan Prabhu entering into the roof and the open terrace. And Prabhupada said, oh, Manmohan has come. So we have businessmen also. And so Manmohan Prabhu, he protested. He said, Prabhupada, I am not the businessman. You are the businessman, he said. Because he said, you went to America with so little money. And now you have established such a big empire. So many temples you have. So you are the businessman. And Prabhupada is very quick to catch on to things. He had a very sharp intellect. I mean, all of you would know this when you read Prabhupada's conversations. And so when Manmohan Prabhu said this, that you are the real businessman and I am not the real, because you have done far more than what I have accomplished. So Prabhupada immediately retorted by saying, so then why don't you join my business? So that is Prabhupada's way of replying. So he said, so why don't you join my business? So here, if you look at what Prabhupada is doing here, something similar. Dr. Naik was interested in further discussion on physics and transcendental knowledge. And Bhaktivedanta Swami replied with equal enthusiasm. Finally, what did he do? Asking the physicists to join him in distributing the cultural heritage of India to the whole world. So Prabhupada is telling him, why don't you join me? Okay. Convinced that such an essay, like how somebody came and glorified Prabhupada that you're a businessman, Prabhupada said, okay, so why don't you join me? So like that, here somebody came and appreciated Prabhupada's article. So Prabhupada told him, why don't you join me? Okay. So convinced that such an essay had great potential to interest educated English-speaking readers, Bhaktivedanta Swami worked hard to raise money in donations to print Easy Journey to Other Planets as a paperback book. So first of all, this is published in Back to Godhead in 2 parts, as we read, still a magazine. So convinced that such an essay had great potential to interest educated English-speaking readers, Bhaktivedanta Swami worked hard to raise enough in donations to print Easy Journey to Other Planets as a paperback book. He finally did so in the fall of 1960. A foreword by Dr. N.K. Siddhanta, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Delhi, arrived late, but was included in the book as an insert. While everyone may gain from it, The student community in particular is recommended to read the book with care and practice Bhakti Yoga, which will help to strengthen the mind and build up character. And I shall be glad to see this work read by the students and the teachers alike. So this is from Dr. N.K. Siddhanta. Very nicely he writes, while everyone may gain from it, the student community in particular is recommended to read the book with care and practice Bhakti Yoga. Look at a direct prescription, which will help to strengthen the mind and build up character. I should be glad to see this work read by the students and the teachers alike. Several Indian scientists and scholars contributed reviews noting the book's scientific cum spiritual vision and the method of speeding over. Okay, and Prabhupada, that this is Prabhupada's expression which they are quoting, and the method of speeding over space, not by mechanical acceleration of speed, but through psychological effort and spiritual emancipation. It is only 38 pages, but it was his first publication, aside from the one-page folded newspaper, Back to Godhead. He tried to distribute the little book effectively. He gave one copy to Dr. P. Banerjee of the National Museum of New Delhi. Now, what we're going to do now, what we're going to have now is a very long recollection by Dr. Banerjee. Dr. Banerjee, he was taking care of the National Museum of New Delhi. He used to come to the library, and these lights are flickering. What? All right, what to do? We'll tolerate the flickering and go on. That's better. That's better. This also needs to. I hope they're able to see me.
ఇది రుబ్బి పెట్టాయి.
Here, and we have now connected it to a hotspot.
No, not yet.
You can't see it. Right? Right?
Yeah.
Can you see me? Can you hear me? Huh?
I can hear you.
All right. Sorry, there was a brief internet outage, and our Rudradeep Nimai Prabhu, who assists in the internet connection, has got it back on. Hope it's stable now.
My phone's in.
He's using his internet. So hope that we have further conclusions. First,
ஏய் இந்த போடுச்சனா அந்த సరే ఇప్పుడు ఏమైంది పోనీ మూండి అంతా లూస్ అవ్వదు నువ్వు ఒழுங்கா మూసి ఉండవు పోయింది పోను కింద అంతా పోడ్చనా ఎట్లా పోయి ఉంది
done?
Is back.
Then it's back. Okay. Can any of you tell me if you can hear me?
మూడిని ఒழுங்கா మూసిరు
Yes, Prabhu, we can hear you.
We can hear you, Prabhuji. We can
Sorry.
hear you.
Yes, Prabhu.
Can you see us? What is it? Or no?
We can see also, Prabhu.
The screen is visible. The screen, I mean, which has shared the screen, is that visible?
No, Prabhu. No, it is not visible.
Okay, I think we are back.
Yeah, now yes.
Okay, all right. The second outage. Okay, now we're back on Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
No, okay, now we're back on Wi-Fi. We think that we're back on Wi-Fi. So we think that Dr. Banerjee, he used to come to the library and consult some books, and I met him there. He gave me a book called Easy Journey to Other Planets. He gave me some copy to distribute for ₹1 or half a rupee each. I felt attracted to him. I thought he was a saintly person, pure devotion, and without any outward glamour. He was not out to attract people just for name and fame. He had little anybody. He was living alone in a small room in Chippiwada. He was devoted to his studies. So I asked him, "Sir, if you have time and you don't mind coming to my house, could you kindly come on Sundays and recite the in my house?" He readily agreed. He was a good scholar. He was learned in the scriptures, and he was fond of communicating his ideas to others. He was a good speaker and a good conversationalist. Polite. This is one thing very, very distinct with Prabhupada. Like although he was very strong when it came to philosophy, he was very polite in his behavior. Whatever he said very distinctly. He spoke in Bengali and explained the essence of the verses. Sometimes he also referred to the commentaries just to give me more information. The others were not very much interested in commentary or in difficult aspects. But because he knew that I had some studies in the field, he explained the commentaries for my sake and for the sake of one or two other gentlemen who were also very elderly and very scholarly. The gatherings at my home would be attended by about 20 or 30 people, and he would continue his explanation for 1 or 2 hours. Then he would recite the Hare Krishna mantra, and we would also take part with the karatals and harmonium. So it was a very enjoyable gathering because he made the difficult things very easy, and he explained everything to all of us according to our needs. He knew that this much is for this person, this much is intended for this man, this much for the others. After the meetings, he used to take a little rest in my house. I requested him to take meals in my house, but he said that he did not take meals prepared by others. But when he met my wife and she said she would be happy to prepare the meals, he said, all right, I will take. And she used to prepare meals on Sundays when he would come. So look at how kind the pure devotee is. He sometimes asked me how to get more and more people attracted towards this field. But as a government worker, I could not persuade anyone very openly, nor had I the time to organize anything on a big scale for him. But he was not satisfied with it. With that, he asked me if I could organize on a bigger scale. He knew that people who attended the meetings at my house were very old, 70, 80, one was 90 years of age, retired educated persons. It lasted for no less than a year. After that, he said he would be trying to go out to other places. He asked me to continue the gatherings, but I said, I am not initiated. He said I could continue anyway because I was born as a Brahmana. He gave me the authority to continue for some time, but I could not continue because I used to go out. I lost all interest after he left. I was a government servant. So this is the glory of the presence of a pure devotee, that when a pure devotee is present, by his very presence, everyone becomes very enthused. Now we say Prabhupada is present in his books. Why are we not enthused? Like the way Banerjee himself says, after Prabhupada left, he lost enthusiasm. Why did that happen? Because the only difference is that physical presence, Prabhupada came to him. He just had to take that association. No effort required. Prabhupada came to him, he just has to take the association. It was very simple. But if we make the effort, to study Prabhupada's books, then the association is available. So, because he did not make the effort to study Prabhupada's books, therefore he lost. I mean, at least when you say Prabhupada's books, like at least there, the Bhakti Goddess magazines, I would say. So, because he did not make that effort, he did not have enough interest. So, this is what happens with any one of us. This can happen with any one of us. That if we stop reading Prabhupada's books, gradually, one by one, everything in our life will start appearing mundane. And then slowly and slowly, we begin to lose the value of Krishna consciousness. Finally, we become very mundane. So therefore, it is very, very essential that we deep dive into Prabhupada's books. In fact, in one sense, we are so fortunate because when Prabhupada did the paintings, when Prabhupada commissioned the paintings, he called them the windows to the spiritual world, because it just gives you a glimpse into the spiritual world. Like, so Prabhupada had referred to Nectar of Devotion as Science of Bhakti Yoga, but we know that this is coming from Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu. It is an ocean of Bhakti Rasa Amrita. Bhakti Rasa Amrita. Bhakti Rasa is the mellow of devotional service. Amrita is eternal. And this is an ocean of Bhakti Rasa. So, the act of taking Prabhupada's books and reading them means we are diving, like we are the divers, right? We're diving into the ocean of Krishna Bhakti Rasa. And there are a lot of precious things, inside. There are varieties of aquatic beings inside. There are precious jewels, a lot of things inside that. So if you look superficially, it all looks very plain, white, bluish waters, you know. But ocean, the divers will tell you that, oh, there are a lot of things inside the ocean. So like that, ordinary people cannot dive into that, right? So you need to have that. Mercy. So we've been given that mercy. They need to have they need to have that diving equipment. For us, the diving equipment has been given by the mercy of Prabhupada. The chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we just need to take the deep dive into Prabhupada's books, and then we'll be lost in that world of Krishna Bhakti Rasa. So if we don't do that, then like how Mr. Banerjee is saying, he lost all interest. So I just combined, I mean, today's class along with the point for today's class also, which is that we may attend various classes, we may hear, all that will work when the pure devotee is physically present. The pure devotee is not present. For us, I'm referring to, I mean, there are great devotees in our movement. I'm just talking about Srila Prabhupada here. So when he's not present, if we don't take association of those who are strict followers, we don't take association of his books. That's the primary thing. If we don't take association of his books, then there's every chance that eventually we may fall down. So I'll stop for today. If there are any questions or comments. Vishnu Vandana Mataji.
Hare
Go
Krishna
ahead.
Prabhuji. Hare
Yes,
Krishna
ma'am.
Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam.
Go ahead.
Prabhuji, see, you mentioned that in Radha Damodar temple, Prabhupada saw that original transcripts by our acharyas. So it's still available there, Prabhuji.
As far as I know, they're all stored in the Vrindavan Research Institute. I can find out.
Okay, but it's not open for public like us that we can't see. Or
incidentally, I'm going to Vrindavan tomorrow, actually. So, I should say that it was the effect of repeating Prabhupada's words. I remember last class there was a question about enthusiasm, and I had said it that Rupa Goswami says that if Laulyam can be purchased, greed for Krishna can be purchased from anywhere, purchase it at any cost from anywhere, So whatever be the cost, just do it. So I remember soon after that class, within a couple of days, my friends in Silicon Valley, they told me that Vaisheshika Prabhu is coming to Vrindavan. So immediately I said, oh, I just gave a class. And then I was wondering, how will I go? And anyway, that's a different detail. But then I remembered the class that I gave. Then I told my wife immediately that I just gave a class that that if you can find greed for Krishna anywhere, go and purchase it at any cost. Then I told my wife, how can I not go? Because I just gave a class. And here is Vaisheshika Prabhu coming to Vrindavan. So he's already there. And those of you who know about it, he's giving daily class. He reads Prabhupada's books, actually. That's what he does. In Kartik, he comes and just reads Prabhupada's books day in and day out. So plan in Vrindavan also. So I plan to hope to join him there in Vrindavan for the next 3-4 days to deep dive into Prabhupada's books. So I hope the next Sunday that I'm going to talk on Lilamrita, I would be much more enthused than that I've been before in my life. So I just wanted to share this. Since you asked me about this manuscripts, I'll find out, Mataji, since I'm going to Vrindavan. I'll find out where these manuscripts, from my understanding, they're in Vrindavan Research Institute.
okay, Prabhuji. Just a glance would make a lot of difference for people like us if it is there.
I mean, we have the Bhaktivedanta Research Center in Calcutta, which Harishori Prabhu was the one who's pioneered that project. And we have the original writings of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. You can see his handwriting. Some of these things are available online. I'll send you the link on the WhatsApp group or on Telegram group. You can see yourself with your own eyes. Of course, if you physically go there, you can see it, but they have scanned it, electronically scanned it. Many very valuable works.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. And one more question that I have, Prabhuji, in today's class, we spoke about how Prabhupada has been converted. People started calling him as a Bhaktivedanta Swami.
Yes.
But what is that the people have seen in Prabhupada? Is the Bhaktivedanta title is being Um,
Oh, no. What
It's like-
Satsuru Maharaj is referring to there is just the fact that previously he was a Vanaprastha. But the moment you take sannyas and you have a danda and all that, then people suddenly begin to respect you, you know. When like even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he also, if you notice, he took sannyas to convince the students and the Mayavadis and others because they were taking him to be like an ordinary householder, right? So to take, so that the scholarly class take him seriously, he took sannyas. So here, of course, Prabhupada took sannyas for the sake of preaching in the Western world. But nevertheless, when someone takes sannyas, even people whom they know well, right, they suddenly begin to look at them with great respect. So I remember in my own life, I have one such experience that Bhaktivinoda Maharaj was previously Sarvaishwarya Prabhu, and I knew him for many years. Of course, he was my senior, much senior to me. But when he took sannyas, the previous day he was Sarvaishwarya Prabhu, the next day is Bhaktivinoda Maharaj. Suddenly, not only me, or others also who knew him, suddenly our whole consciousness changed. Oh, he's sannyasi, you know, the topmost order, like that. So that's in that sense, like you don't take him anymore. You didn't take Prabhupada anymore as a Vanaprastha, which is also not an ordinary thing, but nevertheless, sannyas is its own, it commands its own respect. That's in that sense that Satsuru Maharaj is writing there.
Okay, but not that mean that every sannyasa can be called as Bhaktivedanta, isn't it, right, Prabhuji?
No, I see the name is not the issue there. The point is Bhaktivedanta was title given by his god brothers, if you remember, right, for his writings. So everybody is not Bhaktivedanta. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But he's talking about the general residents of Vrindavan, right? Satsuma is referring to as the general residents of Vrindavan. You know, so they suddenly began to look upon him with respect, not necessarily as Bhaktivedanta, but as a sannyasi.
Yeah, sure, not a problem. Yeah, I got it, Prabhuji. So because now also there are a lot of sannyasis, or they not those sannyasis can be called as Bhaktivedanta.
Yeah, it is not an ordinary thing. Bhaktivedanta is a very big qualification. It's a very big qualification. Qualification not just by theoretical knowledge, but their actual. See, in Vaishnava circles, it's not just enough to have a title. Your qualification should match with your title. In the sense that Bhaktivedanta is, like Prabhupada said, you need to take these exams, Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhaktivedanta. So you have a whole series of books that you study, right? That alone is not enough. Your behavior, your personal life should sync with that qualification. That is called a real Bhaktivedanta. And those people are not ordinary; they are rare.
Yes, Prabhuji. Okay, thanks, Prabhuji.
Yes.
And one more thing, if you permit, just a small question, Prabhuji. So
Let us see. I'll do one thing. Let us see if there are other questions, and then we'll come back to you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Anyone else would like to ask or share something? There's something. Okay, please add me on the Telegram group. Deepti Chobiman. Mataji, can you just message that on the WhatsApp? So then we'll add you onto the Telegram group. Okay. Gone again? Is it still there? Yeah, I don't know. Is it still there? Internet? Okay. Yes, it looks like there are no other questions, Madhuri. You can go ahead with your question.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. Just a very small question. So we read about that Prabhupada was telling about like the Chippiwada house, right? So he mentioned the importance of not using a temple as apartment house.
Yeah.
So is it because of that, like it was creating a lot of noise? And we should not convert a temple in the apartment house, or what does that mean, Prabhuji?
Actually, if you notice the temples, you see, there are two kinds of Goswami lines. The Goswami lines that are spiritual and the Goswami lines which are hereditary, which means that different temples in Vrindavan and other places, they're managed through the family line. Actually, they are called the Goswami line by family. Then you have the spiritual Goswami line, which is by sannyas and the disciples and that kind of line. So this family line, what happens is they just take it for granted that, okay, this is inherited, this temple is inherited by our family, we just maintain the temple, that's it. So Prabhupada's point is that is not the real purpose of living in the temple. Living in the temple is okay, you maintain the temple and then you eat and sleep nicely. That is not the purpose of the temple. Prabhupada said the purpose of a temple is it's an educational place, it's a place of education. It is a university, the Krishna Consciousness University. It's a university, it's a place to learn. So the teaching should continuously go on there, teaching, preaching. That should happen. That is the life of the Krishna Consciousness movement. The teaching and preaching is the life of course, chanting Hare Krishna is a life. I mean to say that, like for individual people, like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would say that only a dead man cannot preach. So the symptom of life is they would preach. This is the symptom of life. So this is what Prabhupada is trying to say. That what is the point of trying to show the deity to make a living? Saligram Dwara Badam Banga. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would say that the story of using the saligram. Saligram is Krishna manifested as a stone, right? Krishna manifested, Krishna manifested as a stone, but it is not ordinary stone. It is not different from Krishna. No, it's a manifestation of Krishna. But if people don't realize that, then there is once a priest who wanted to eat some groundnuts. So he took the salagram shilas and started pounding on the groundnuts to split the peel so that you get the groundnut from inside. It's very abominable to do something, very offensive to do something like that. So the idea of salagram is not, so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say, salagram is not meant for showing to eat your food so that people come and give donation so you get your food. That's not the purpose of salagram. So the purpose of the deity is that it's meant to educate people. First of all, you have to educate yourself and educate everybody else in the world. All temples are meant to be educational centers. That's the point that Prabhupada is trying to make.
Yeah, understood, Prabhuji. Thanks for the clarification, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Leela Madhuri, Lalita Madhuri.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, there's one question related to answer which you gave now. The knowledge is pure, Krishna conscious. The pastimes of the Lord, reading Bhagavatam, everything is pure. But the same knowledge is making one person to be puffed up and the other person to be pure. Because you were talking about Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhava. So it is not only a title. That person also should have some change in their personal life. So
Yes.
how come one person is getting pure and by studying of Bhagavatam, the other person is popped up so that the person is going down in Krishna conscious?
So Prabhupada gives a clue to this, He can say, he writes in the Bhagavatam that one can realize Krishna in every page of the Bhagavatam if one reads with rapt attention. One hears with rapt attention or reads with rapt attention. Then he says, no one can read or hear with, basically here, let me just put it here. No one can hear the Bhagavatam with rapt attention unless one is pure in mind. Then he says, no one can be pure in mind unless one is pure in the habits of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Pure in habits. And no one can be pure in habits unless one is pure in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So, it is not a question of trying to show off, It is rather, so what happens is if a person is not really purified like this, then they cannot hear with rapt attention. If they're not hearing with rapt attention, they are not realizing Krishna in the pages of the Bhagavatam. Hearing, anybody can hear, even karmis can hear. In fact, you would be surprised to note that so many people, academic scholars, they understand Gaudiya Vaishnavism very well. In fact, some of them understand even better than our own devotees what our philosophy is about. Very nicely they understand. But are they advanced? No. So what is preventing them from that advancement? They are not pure in their mind. They are not pure in their mind because they are not pure in their habits. They're not pure in their habits because they are not pure in the activities of eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So, of course, you may wonder, oh, devotees are following the 4 regulative principles, but still they're puffed up. But following the 4 regulative principles is not just some simple thing. In the sense that, but it's a very clear, broad definition. If you look at Prabhupada's definition for the Jhansi League of Devotees, and if you look at the first ever printout that Prabhupada pasted on 26 2nd Avenue about what initiates are supposed to follow, he clearly says there, no unnecessary talk. And he says, no frivolous talks and no frivolous sports. Today, the ISKCON that I joined and the ISKCON that is today, there is some, I don't know to what extent there is a difference. Some people say it is they give the example of Dorothy. I don't know that story yet. That is, she wakes up in one day and she finds herself in a totally different place. One proper disciple is telling me, in good standing, of course, in this car. This thing, it's looked like that Dorothy in that story. So we find a kind of a Kumbh Mela kind of atmosphere today in ISKCON. That's very unfortunate. That has happened simply because people have not focused on studying Prabhupada's books. They've got distracted by so many different things, not just materialism, but also trying to read all kinds of literatures by the Goswamis. So then we've got a situation where people are interested. People think watching sports is fantastic, fine. Playing sports is fine. Watching movies is fine. So many things. It's just too many things to enumerate. Watching action, whatever so-called action movies which have no sex is fine. It's just, there is no end to it. There's no end to it. So we have not been careful enough to, as Prabhupada said, boil the milk. He said, boil the milk. Otherwise, as we keep expanding, the milk will become thin. So we need to focus on this aspect. So the thing is that you need to look at those devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement who are strictly following Prabhupada. And it is these people who are actually pushing ahead the movement. So like Prabhupada once said, how does it matter to you? He said, when you're sitting in a boat, how does it matter to you whether the person sitting to you next to you is first class, second class, third class, fourth class, fifth class? Doesn't matter. You sit tightly in the boat and cross. So like that, in the times that I joined, distractions were very little in Krishna consciousness. But today, you have a lots of kinds of distractions in the name of devotional service. So that is why it is very, very important that we study Prabhupada's books carefully. We understand what is the standard. And once we understand what is the standard, then there is no question of trying to portray that I'm a Bhakti Vedanta. For one simple example, during the days that we joined, we joined not necessarily as full time, but when we came to the temple, I think we brought this up before, that for the first 6 months or 1 year, all that you had to do was clean the toilets and clean the floors. But today, that's not the standard thing that everybody experiences in ISKCON. So the point that I'm trying to make is that there was a certain kind of intensity and a certain kind of focus that was there in the earlier days of the Krishna conscious movement. Now that same intensity and focus is there, but not spread across. You will find it in different pockets, but it's not spread across. So we have to be careful to identify those pockets, identify those people, associate with those people, and go back to God. There are still lots of devotees who are very serious practitioners of Krishna consciousness. It's not a hopeless situation. But all that I'm saying is, like we have entered like the Kumbh Mela phase of ISKCON where everything goes. But in the Kumbh Mela, usually Prabhupada had his own tent. So like that, we have very serious followers of Srila Prabhupada in our movement, very exemplary. And some of these people will never even know unless you associate with them and see their life. So there are, many such devotees. And it is these devotees who are the driving force of the Krishna conscious movement. So how does it matter whether someone is having a Bhaktivedanta degree and not up to the mark when it comes to behavior? Yes, it's unfortunate. But what can you do? What can I do also? So, right? So what can we do? So what we can do is try to identify those devotees who are seriously following, take their association and advance and go back to Godhead. And of course, we go back to Godhead by preaching to everyone. Like Prahlad Maharaj says, I don't want to go back alone. I want to take everyone with me. That is Prabhupada's mood also. So our mood should be, let me practice Krishna consciousness, and along the way, as many people I can inspire in Krishna consciousness, let me do it.
So when we are surrounded by people who are not taking Prabhupada's instructions, what should I do?
Take shelter of his books. But things that, see, one thing I want to tell you is that nothing in this world is permanent, Even this situation that you're facing now is temporary. Please know that, know it for certain. It is temporary. It will change. You will encounter in your life, if you desire so, you will encounter serious devotees. Things will change. All kinds of things will happen in your life. But you need to have that faith, that Prabhupada set up this movement. And just like you took up to Krishna consciousness with sincerity, like there are several hundreds and thousands of people who are taking to Krishna consciousness with sincerity. So we can maintain that faith, that yes, sometimes the situation may be bad, but the holy name cannot be contained, as Vaisheshika Prabhu says. It expands, holy name cannot be contained. Similarly, the glories of the serious devotees, the glories of the great devotees cannot be contained. It will expand. Somehow Krishna will arrange for things to reach you. The devotees will come to your place. All kinds of things can happen. We cannot conceive of what Krishna can do, but we should have that faith that I have joined the extended Sankirtan pastime of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. ISKCON is the extended Sankirtan pastime of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And definitely, there are great devotees whose association you will receive, but you need to really hanker for it. Krishna will be testing it. How much do you... first of all, we don't deserve the association of great personalities, the Bhaktivedanta. We don't deserve it in the first place. Somehow by their costless mercy, somehow Krishna by his costless mercy, the Parampara, the Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, by their costless mercy, they're just giving to us what is so difficult to obtain, To get the association of a Bhaktivedanta is very, very difficult. But we have been fortunate that Prabhupada inaugurated a whole movement where it's a training movement for pure devotees, and there are very great exalted souls in our movement. So we should keep that faith that Prabhupada is still, it's not that Prabhupada was the founder of Acharya ISKCON. Prabhupada is the founder of Acharya ISKCON, and he lives in his books. So he's not, as easily available as he was in the past during the physical presence, but he's equally available. How is he equally available? Just pick up his books and you see how much your life will change. You just try to read his books with rapt attention and all kinds of magic will start in your life. And that's a fact. Undeniably, that's a fact.
Yes, Prabhu. Can I ask a final question, the last question?
Sure, Manji.
Prabhu, you said that the situation will change. Is it not something wrong which I expect that things should be changed because Krishna has put me in such a situation for me to learn something? But definitely, I don't know what I'm supposed to learn. If I expect that things should be changed, is it not something which I'm demanding from Krishna?
Okay, it's a fantastic question. Once I had asked this, Gopi Parantha Prabhu, I did not ask it, rather you're asking a question. So, but whereas, that's a better situation. Once Gopi Parantha Prabhu had told me this, that way back. So he told me, don't try to change the external circumstances. Accept the circumstances internally, because externals you cannot change. And it is happening by the will of Krishna. Only your internal, your attitude you can change, So what I learned from it was that when we take up that mood of tatte nukampam susamikshamano bunjanevatma kritam vipakam hridvagvapubir vidadan namaste jivetayo muktipade sadaya bhak. If we continue to accept whatever comes out of its own accord as Krishna's will, and we continue to just go through that, then Mukti Padesabhaya, the Krishna consciousness, we have the rightful claim, it says, to liberation. Liberation means liberation of Krishna consciousness. Anyway, the point is that, yes, you brought up a very important point. We cannot change external, that's a fact. But when we have this mood of accepting what the situation is, then definitely Krishna will also change the external. It means, I'm not saying that he'll change the consciousness of the people you're dealing with. That, I don't know how Krishna is going to work. But definitely your externals also will change in the sense that Krishna may place you in a different kind of situation. All kinds of things will happen. But That will happen by Krishna's will. But the point is, it will happen. That is my point. It's not that throughout your whole life, you're going to be struggling with devotees who are less than ideal. That's not going to happen. I mean, if you have the right attitude of accepting whatever you're going through, then definitely Krishna will arrange for great souls to come into your life in different ways. You'll encounter them in different ways, and Krishna will provide that opportunity. Right now, he may be testing you to see how you go through that test, but he will definitely provide. I mean, at least the Krishna Conscious movement right now has got hundreds and thousands of such great souls. So that's why I'm talking about it confidently. You will be able to encounter great souls in the time frame that Krishna decides. When, I don't know, but it will happen. You can be sure of that fact.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. I'm taking it as a blessing from your side. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so I think we'll stop for today. We'll resume next Sunday. Okay, thank you very much. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha paritanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo namo.